Some would call Snow White a poisoned apple to red staters, but maybe that's not the case, at least according to Deadline here. Hey, welcome back to the Box Office Revival. By the way, I'm Brandon Gray, creator of Box Office Mojo, and I thought this article was kind of interesting. I mean, you decide if you think it's true or if this is perhaps the lamestream media shilling for Disney or not. Let's dive in here. So, the headline says, Snow White, How Controversial Disney Princess Fared in Blue and Red County Cinemas. And Deadline is getting this data from Intelligence, which is a box office analytics firm, who says that 60% of Snow White's ticket sales and 56.5% of attendance came from blue counties, not red. So on the surface, it seems like this story is saying that, yeah, we expected this to go blue, and it went blue. But here's why this story is interesting. It's the fact that, in general, the blue states go to the movies more than the red states. They make up the vast majority of the box office versus the red states. And the story details that further down below. By the way, a quick update here, in case you missed it. This is published yesterday, so they're using the $43 million opening, but the number through Sunday came in at 42.2, and of course the weekend proper was 38.7 because you got to back out those 3.5 million previews. So the actual Snow White opening weekend was $38.7 million. And Intelligence also was estimating that 3.1 million tickets were sold for Snow White. And it's funny, they break these numbers up. Look at this. Ticket sales, 60%, but then attendance is less. And that's probably because ticket prices are higher in the blue states than they are in the red states. You know, because the blue states, that includes obviously New York City and LA, San Francisco. You know, these are very expensive cities and have accordingly expensive ticket prices to go along with that. So not surprising in that sense. But as we delve deeper into the story, they're pointing out that blue counties have 53% of the screens of the theaters, and they generate nearly 67% of the overall ticket sales and nearly 64% of the overall attendance. So that's the split there. And they go on, the liberal-leaning areas, LA, New York, Chicago, etc. Of course, very expensive cities, hence higher ticket prices. Now here's where it gets more interesting, because Intelligence has a standard for family and animated movies, and they're saying that typically animated and family movies play to 63% in blue counties and 37% in red counties, and that attendance is split 60-40. So you'll see that, in fact, Snow White fared better by both of these metrics. So let me break it down for you by just writing out these numbers in a clearer format than is presented in this article to get the real gist here. So blue states have 53% of the theaters, which means red states have 47% of the theaters in the whole country. Snow White saw 56.5% of its attendance come from blue states and 43.5% come from red states. Now, overall, Intelligence says that blue states account for 63.6% of attendance, and red states, of course, 36.4% of attendance. So you see that on the face of it, Snow White is over-indexing for red states by about 7 points here. Furthermore, if you look at just the family movies, according to this story, blue states are at 60% and red states are at 40%. Stands to reason red states might be more family friendly, I suppose. But even still, Snow White is 3.5 points ahead of the norm for family and animated movies. So it looks like Deadline has a point here, that all of the political controversy had basically no effect, at least demographically, at least geographically. So let's go back to the story and see what else they have to say and see if they left any questions on the table. Deadline suggests that some of the disparity could be attributed to an overperformance from Latinos and Hispanics in markets like Dallas, San Antonio, Phoenix, basically Texas and Arizona, which were red states in the last presidential election. Even mentioning that Latino Hispanics made up about 30% of the audience, according to exit polling for the picture. And then they go on to talk about all the controversies here, with Rachel Zegler, the dwarves, all that kind of stuff. All the clickbaity stuff that people have been enjoying for the years since Snow White was announced and Rachel Zegler was cast. Here's a quote from Intelligence Chief Strategy Officer Steve Buck. He says, "There was no red theater blockade due to any perceived controversies with Snow White. In fact, the opposite. Theaters in red counties performed better than they would normally for a family animated film of this size and scope." Okay, let me double check the rest of this story. Nope. Okay, they do not ask Mr. Buck how Disney movies normally perform. So, yeah, it's great to throw out the family animated stat, and that is a worthy stat, but this picture is not complete, Deadline. We need to know how Snow White performed in red states versus other Disney movies, versus Mufasa, versus Moana 2, versus The Little Mermaid, and on down the line. That would give us a better sense of whether or not the whole Zegler controversy hurt business in the red states. They do go on to say, though, towards the end of the story, that box office sources, not just Disney, affirm that Snow White played evenly across the country. Okay, but again, I need that comparison to other Disney movies, because Disney movies, for all we know, may appeal more to red states, because Disney is a very traditional family brand. At least it has been prior to the last 10 years or so. So it stands to reason that red states might be really into Disney movies, even more so than regular family and animated movies. But we don't get that stat in this story, and it really needs it to drive the point home, which ostensibly is that there was really no effect on the box office. Because the truth of the matter is really in this paragraph, and they don't go into all the details as to why Snow White underperformed, but this is part of it. Snow White is based on older Disney IP, and we have seen, of course, that it's only the Disney Renaissance movies, the adaptations like Beauty and the Beast and Lion King and Aladdin, that do better than the traditional or classic Disney adaptations. So that's a big chunk of this. It's not the only part of it, but I think that is far more impactful than the Rachel Zegler controversies. They also go on to say that Intelligence has a demographic of 28% under 13, 28% under 13, versus Barbie, which did 14% under 13. So not, I guess, because they're considered to be both girly movies. I think Barbie just in general had a much older demographic, but I guess that's the point. Snow White is a kiddie movie, and kiddie movies don't necessarily open big. They can leg out, and Deadline tries to drive that point home with the last sentence, especially with spring break so imminent that they're hoping that Snow White will get a little lift in the barren spring break marketplace. Anyway, what say you? Do you think the controversies hurt Snow White, or was the notion of a Snow White remake rotten even before Rachel Zegler opened her mouth? And if you're looking for the objective perspective on the movies and the box office, I invite you to like this video and subscribe to the Box Office Revival. Thank you for watching.